Welcome, welcome. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kitshanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu l'asok b'divrei Torah.
Amen.
And of course, we are doing Torah Temimah because we've done all the Rashis on Parshat Yitro, which is this week's Sedra. So you can find them on my YouTube site. If you type in a search for Yitro, Yitro, you should find them. All right. So still dealing with this verse here, verse 23 of chapter 7. And at the end of it, where it says everything basically got wiped out, Vayishaer ach Noach, but only Noah, Va'asher ito, and that which was with him, Bateva, in the ark. In the ark. That's all that remained. But we're going to see that it's not entirely the case. So here we are, Vayishar ach Noach. And he says, Iyain, take a look, Masha Katuv, or Masha Katavnu, what we wrote, Lekaman, below, the Parshat Lech Lecha, in the Parsha of Lech Lecha, that's the next Parsha that follows Noah, but Pasuk Vayavo HaPalit, regarding the verse that says, and the escaper came, right? The one who escaped came. And that's chapter, let's see, I guess that must be chapter 14 of Genesis, verse 13. And as a matter of fact, I'm going to find it for you right now. I'm going to try anyway. It may take a moment for this to happen. Well, apparently it's not helping me, but let me do this. Let's see what I could do. I may actually have to. Oh, let's see. What can I do here? Forgive me. Unfortunately, I'm dealing with a mechanical issue here. Let's see if that'll do it. Yeah, there we are. Now I can do it. Are you seeing what I'm doing here? Are you able to see the new page?
Well, you said chapter 7. There's no chapter 7. Oh, are you
No,
in Lech Lecha?
I'm in Lech Lecha now.
Oh, I thought you were doing Yitro. Oh,
No, no.
okay. But we are doing Yitro, right? And you're just looking
No,
at a
no,
reference?
no. We're not doing Yitro because we did all the Rashis on Yitro. So we're
Okay.
continuing with Torah Temimah, and we were in Parshat Noach. We're in the midst of Parshat Noach, and we just read a reference to this chapter in Lech Lecha, chapter 14, verse 13, because it has a reference to only Noah remaining in the ark, right? So
Okay.
that's what it
I
said.
get it.
And then later on in the story of Abraham, after the king of Sodom and the other kings there are captured and taken off along with Lot, it says Vayavo Hapalit. It says and the escapee, right? Came Vayaged Avram Ha'ivri, and he came and told Abram the Hebrew, right? And then talking about where Abraham was living at the time. All right, so let's take a look here. Here it is. Vayavo Hapalit, right? The one who escaped. Okay. Amar Rabbi Yochanan. Rabbi Yochanan said, Ze Og Melech HaBashan. This individual that came to tell Abram what had happened was Og, king of Bashan. Shepalat midor hamabul. Why? Because he escaped from the generation of the flood. Interesting, right? After all, we were told that all human beings died. And here we're reading that, in fact, Og, who is going to be mentioned later on in the book of Numbers, he was a gigantic human being, that he escaped the flood. He managed to escape it. Let's take a look. Lo nitba'er. It's not clear, right? It wasn't clarified. Ha'hechreach lidrasha zu. What is forcing this particular, in other words, what's indicating to Rabbi Yochanan to interpret Hapalit as referring to Og and to interpret it as the one who escaped the flood? Where does this come up from? That's what he's saying, right? And of course, it's a rabbinic question, and you don't ask. My father taught me, my father who was a rabbi, my late father, taught me that a rabbinic question means you know the answer, The person who's asking the question knows the answer. All right, well, v'yesh lomar, and one could say, mishum, the reason is, Parshat Devarim, that in the Parsha of Devarim, that is the first Parsha of the book of Deuteronomy, Ketiv, it's written, Ki rak og melech habashan nishar miyeta harafaim, because in there's a verse that says, only Og, king of Bashan, remained from the remaining Rephaim, right? From the rest of the Rephaim. These Rephaim again were this nation of giants. Uve Bereshit Rabbah, and in the Midrash Bereshit Rabbah, Perek Lamed Aleph, chapter 31, Darshu, they interpret Hapasuk de Iyov. They take the verse from Job, which it says Harifaim Yecholalu, the Rifaim tremble mitachat mayim, from under water. Sounds like a reference to the flood. Deka'e, because this whole little section refers al dor hamabul. It's a reference to the generation of the flood. That's how we understand that little section of Job. V'chein darshu, and likewise they interpreted Sanhedrin in the tractate Sanhedrin, page 108a, hapasuk Rephaim bal yakumu, that the Rephaim will not arise. So what's happening is that Torah Temimah is looking at all these other references to Rephaim and seeing how it adds up to this drush that we had. Okay, and that's that is from Isaiah chapter 26. Teka'e al dor hamabul, that also is speaking about the generation of the flood. That is to say, this verse of Isaiah means, klomar, that is to say, she'ein lahem chelek le'olam haba. So by saying they will not arise, and part of that rising, at least as we understand that last chapter in Daniel, refers to resurrection. So the Rephaim will not have any resurrection. And there is in this tractate, the reason why we started off by referring, by mentioning the tractate Sanhedrin at all, is that that last chapter in Sanhedrin talks about people who do not have a share in the world to come. Umekevan, and because diktiv ba'og, right, refers to Og, shenishar miyeta harfaim, that he in fact remained of all the Rephaim. Remember, that's a specific verse in Deuteronomy, that he did remain. Lachen darshu, and for this reason they interpreted shenishar midor hamabul, that he in fact escaped, he remained from the generation of the flood. Uva hapalit behe, and not only that, it doesn't say uva palit, it doesn't say a refugee came, it says the refugee or the survivor. Behe, that's the hey, ha palit, klomar hayadua. In other words, it's a definite article. So it must be referring to something we've already talked about. And of course, here in Noah, right? Or excuse me, in Lech Lecha, we're referring back to Og, this Rephaim, this one of the Rephaim, who survived. The Ian Babal Haturim, he says, not only that, there's an interesting reference here to Baal Haturim. It's one of the commentaries on the Chumash, and it is with remez. It has to do with allusions, this Baal Haturim interpretation. I believe it's Jacob ben Asher, who's known as the Baal Haturim. And it's referring to the Tur, referring to a classic commentary or a compendium of halachot. It is sort of the foundation of the Shulchan Aruch. At any rate, I want to make sure I've got the right. Yeah, okay. And he says there in this commentary on the Torah, and so it has to do with gematrias and abbreviations, etc. We're going to see a gematria, an interesting gematria. So these are known as remez, allusions. In other words, it's not a direct interpretation, and it's not a literary interpretation in the way Midrash operates, but rather simply an allusion by looking at numerology and things like that. In Parshat Noach, the pasuk there, where it says, the one that we were just reading, right? וישאר ach Noach, and only Noah remained. Katav, this is V'zeloshuno, this is what the Balaturim wrote, quote, ach Noach, begematria og. If you look at the word ach Noach, and you add up its numerical values, so 1, 20, 21, 50, 71, and 8 is 79. And Og is, Ayin is 70, Vav is 6, and Gimel is 3. Guess what you get? That's what we mean by a remez, an allusion, right? V'nir'eh, so that Ach Noah actually adds up to Og. Wow. V'nir'eh, and it would appear, dera'ah, that he saw, that Balaturim saw, l'ramez came to allude to this. Kedei yashev, in order to solve, right? Ech efshar lomar bichlal, how one can possibly say at all, shenishar ish levad Noach, that someone remained besides Noah, uveito, and his household, midor hababu. So it says, Vayishar ach Noach, and we're saying that the word ach Noach, actually, because in Gematria adds up to Og, there's that illusion that Og actually did survive, right? Shenishar ish levad Noach, besides Noach and his household, midor hamabul, from the generation of the flood, acharei dichtiv meforash, since it states quite explicitly Vayishar ach Noach, because it says Yishar and the words ach Noach. Lachen romez, and for that reason it alludes, sheyesh lehasharato remez, right? So to keep him as an allusion, B'lashon Torah, even in the actual wording of the Torah, alludes to the fact that Og survived. Sweet, very, very sweet. So there you get an example of a remez. So there we are.
How
Go on.
do these guys know the entire Tanakh by heart?
They have an encyclopedic knowledge. They really do. They start studying very early, and they devote themselves like 8 to 10 hours a day to study. And because they start off so early and their minds are just absorbing this stuff, they have this encyclopedic kind of knowledge. Not every one of them, but given the fact that all the little boys, all the Jewish boys at the time, pretty well most of them, were having to do this as part of their education, you'd find at least, a few that were pretty much on the level of geniuses. Yeah. They do have an amazing breadth of understanding. They're only okay. I mean, you can single out people like Maimonides or the Vilna Gaon, but there are many other scholars, just like, Torah Temimah may not be, that is, Asher ben Yechiel may not be on the level of a Maimonides or Vilna Gaon, but nevertheless, he is one of many, I would say, really incredible scholars. His father was actually, he authored something called the Aruch HaShulchan, which is basically, again, it's a master work of discussion of halachot in the Shulchan Aruch. So, his father. Okay. So, next chapter, Vayashochu Hamayim. Right. So the here we go. Let's take a look at it where it says here, Vayashoku Hamayim. I believe it means something to the effect that here's the Aramaic, V'nachu Mayim. In other words, they settle down, right? The waters settle down. Amar Rav Chisda, so said Rav Chisda, Dor Hamabul, he says that the generation of the flood, Berotchin Kilkalu, they messed up their lives in boiling or boiling water, Uverotchin Nidonu, and they were judged with boiling water. What do we mean by Berotchin Kilkalu? That they perverted through boiling water, Avera, in other words, their sexual exploits were like he's describing that act as if one's boiling, right? Boiling over. Uverotchini donu, and they were judged with boiling water. Ketiv hacha, here it says, it says vayishoku hamayim, or what? Let's make sure I'm saying it correctly, right? Vayashoku hamayim. Excuse me. Actually, this doesn't make sense. It would make sense to say vayashoku hamayim. That would sound correct in terms of pointing. In other words, that the waters calmed down. Uchtiv hatam, and there in the book of Esther, it talks about vechamat hamelach, and the anger of the king, shochecha, something like that. Here's the same root, meaning was assuaged. So the waters were assuaged, and we see that this idea of assuaging has to do with anger, and we talk about boiling anger as well, right? So there's the connection. Take a look at that. So let's see if we can do this. Where are we? Sorry, I want to make sure I've got the right place here. Okay. Okay, Aleph here. Ustam chama rotachat, right? I think what he's saying here is, and the basic meaning, right? We had come across this expression, chama rotachat. So either it's chema rotachat, boiling anger, right? Ustam chama rotachat. So he's saying the idea of something that is either, if we're going to read it as chema, which is in that verse, right, or chama, which could mean, it could mean like hot water, something like that. Rotach. In other words, if we come across this word chama or chema, we're talking about something that's boiling. Kidichtiv, as it states, v'chamato be'erabo. It's again, there's that bo'er, to burn. His anger burned within him. So I need to understand and clarify exactly the point that he's making here, because I don't have any vowels, right? But let's keep going, and I think things slowly become clarified. For Afkan, and so he says here too, v'dichtiv vayashochu, right? That since it says were assuaged, mashma shahayu rodchim, the implication is that if they had to be assuaged, then they must have been boiling to begin with. Right? So, Yerushalmi says, and in the the Talmud Yerushalmi, the Jerusalem Talmud, Perek Chelek, again, this is Tractate Sanhedrin in the chapter called Chelek. Uva midbar, this looks like uva midrash rabbah, right? And could be b'midbar rabbah, right? But in the midrash rabbah, yalfi, they learn out, shehayu hamayim rotchim, right? So this is probably b'midrash, it's probably Bereshit rabbah, but anyway, they learned out that the waters were boiling, mipasuk, from a verse to Eov in Job 6, chapter 6. But 8 years, it looks like years revu, nitzmatu bechamo nidaku mimkomam. So this is a verse in Job that I'm going to have to check up. So I'm going to stop today. because I want to make sure that I'm better prepared. I did not have a chance to prepare this particular section, and so I don't want to just guess what it's saying. I want to be sure so that I don't lead you astray any more than I do anyway. So I'm going to stop the share here, and we'll let it go for that. Any points before we sign off?
Oh.
Okay. Okay. All right.